Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back to some more bite-sized business advice. We have a very special guest about an important topic today, how to command the stage and speak like a pro. And this is one of those things that, I personally believe all entrepreneurs and business owners need to do, because in most cases, you're the face of your brand. So you might as well represent it well and be able to communicate with customers, partners, collaborators, whatever. We're going to learn how to do that. Everything you need to know in 15 minutes. We're just going to cram it in there. And my guest is from the other side of the globe, which is super cool, over in Australia. Before we go any further, Miroslav Petrovic, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Brandon.
So I'm always excited to talk to people from Australia. For some odd reason, we get a lot of downloads from New Zealand. I know it's not the same. I know. But also Australia as well. And I don't know, maybe we have an Aussie vibe on this podcast. So welcome in and welcome to all your fellow Aussie friends for listening. Tell me, what you are a speaker, an author, you help people develop their speaking skills. What exactly does that mean? Because we're speaking right now, but I don't know if that's exactly what you do. So what do you help your clients with?
Yeah, it's a good question, Brandon. There's a framework that I often teach, which is like what the speaking journey looks like. A lot of people start off from paralysis, meaning they can't speak, they're nervous, they avoid it, they find excuses not to do it. They pass it on to someone else. If they get on stage, their memory runs crazy, they forget. Sometimes there's nervous, P's that have to happen beforehand just to get on stage. It's like the nervous system really doesn't want to be in the experience. And then on the far end of it is what I call posturing. And posturing, it's like, yes, they're getting up there, but it's like they're mimicking what they think it should be looking like. And it's like, it's over posturing. The way I describe it tongue in cheek is like when someone's watched too many Tony Robbins videos.
I can picture it exactly.
But that's not authentic. It's not you. It's like you're putting on an act to please the audience. And humans are pretty switched on. Like we can feel authenticity. We know when someone's being, like a salesman kind of dodgy. It's like, it's not what they're saying. It's like you can just feel that something isn't congruent. And I find like I'm exaggerating these two things. Posturing and paralysis often work hand in hand. And even with experienced speakers, it's usually like they found unconscious ways to protect themselves through posturing. And as I remove some of these veils of posturing, what you get is more authentic connection from stage. And you can literally feel the room and that attention melt into itself as people open up more of who they really are in front of each other.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was involved in a program one time where they were, it wasn't necessarily speaker training, but they went into a lot of that. And the general theme of the advice was to methodically alter your energy into these 4 different states so you could seem more authentic and connect with the audience. And the whole thing to me was just like, so we're robots? Like what really are we doing? Because I'm pretty sure anybody can see through this if I'm manipulating my energy. Is that kind of what you're getting at here? Like these pre-scripted both feelings and words and tones with people?
Yeah, it's like, for me, there's 2 approaches into speaking. One is what I call mechanical approach. This is how you lift your voice, and then make sure you end in this, and make sure you do this. And it's like the life force, the essence of that person is not actually moving through it because it's such a mechanical approach. It's like they're playing with these little switches where they've been told this is what's organic. Now, I don't know what this person that you listen to is teaching, but I find when it comes from authenticity, the change starts from an energetic place. Like if I tell you about a hard story, can I let you into the hardship as opposed to just telling you the things? If I'm going to speak about something I'm excited about, can I actually let that volume of excitement come through? Like, can it come from an authentic feeling-based place where it's altering all the the mechanical knobs and levers by itself, which is a lot more, let's call it vulnerable, because you're not pretending to do the thing just to get the idea of engagement. You're actually letting people into your world and into your experiences.
Yeah, and the craziest thing is like we do this. I mean, naturally in conversation, we do these things. So what translates from like me and you having a conversation from me going on stage and then becoming a robot? What is that that's making me go to robot phase? Because I think I just need to deliver information.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time it's self-protection. It's scary being on stage. It's scary being seen. So we posture and we armor to protect, you know, who we think we are. And I think cognitively, there's an idea of I need to be someone in front of people and I need to do something in front of people. And then we try and grow into this imaginary idea of who we're supposed to be. And I've had conversations with people one on one. They're absolutely amazing. Then they get on stage, and I'm like, all that magic just disappeared. Like, why? Well, it was already there, and whatever story you're living inside of who you need to be on stage, like it's unnecessary. It will just come back to who you are off stage.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So I want to unpack this. You have three secrets for owning the stage. Let's dive into what they are and hopefully give somebody some insight into how to be a better speaker, presenter, and actually command the stage. So where do we start with these three secrets?
Yeah, the first one is really connecting to yourself. And this sounds easy, and it's kind of where we've been talking so far. And I just get with people actually being able to be on stage and be fully connected to themselves, to be able to take up as much space as they need, so being completely off script. Yes, scripts are useful, but a lot of the time we use scripts to protect ourselves. I don't know what I'm going to do on stage, so if I memorize this whole thing, I can just keep talking. No one can stop me, and I'm going to survive. And it's like, great. You're also not going to have much engagement. People are probably going to be falling asleep, even if their eyes are open. So, one approach, not ideal. For me, being able to connect to yourself means like being unwavering in who you are in front of people. If you need to breathe, you breathe. If you need to pause, you pause. And it feels more like the way you would have a conversation with a friend. It's just you being your natural self on stage. So that I'll give you the overview of all three parts first. The second part is connecting to your audience, and like to actually have a genuine connection with an audience, not treat them like a bunch of mechanical robots. And audiences know this. And I sometimes do attunements live on stage where I'll get a speaker up and I'll just tweak a tiny little thing, takes about a minute, and the audience will be like, whoa, this is amazing how much more connected we are to them. I'm like, yeah, because human connection is a living thing. And then finally, it's owning the stage. And for me, owning the stage is very much an energetic experience. You can't pretend your way onto there, and it's unique for everyone. Like often we think of owning the stage as like big speakers, I don't know, Tony Robbins and Barack Obama and this kind of thing. And it's like in their own way they do, but there's no one way to own the stage. And I find the capacity to own the stage is based on how much of ourselves we're allowing to come through when we're on stage.
Mm.
So if we're all like a single note in the musical scale, it's like how much of that note resounds, like there's a little ding, or can it fill up the whole space and keep reverberating through it?
Yeah, I like that. And I'm also curious about step one too. Um, being yourself, being authentic and really stepping into that when you're maybe preparing to give a talk, a presentation, you tend to want to model other people. Maybe it's your first time or you haven't done it a ton, or maybe you have and you just don't feel that audience connection like you mentioned. So we watch videos, we watch other people. You said you even joked at the beginning, people have watched too much Tony Robbins, right? What is that kind of balance between watching other people do it, but then adopting it for yourself? Like, how do you really start to understand who you are as a presenter?
This is a good question. It's a really good question. I think you're gonna need to do two things. One of them is either self-reflection, because you will not be able to see your own blind spots when you're in them, or you need to work with a coach, peer mentor, someone else that's going to support you to see them. And I find training environments are, it's like they're absolutely essential. You need places where you can get to know yourself, because if you're being paid thousands of dollars or you've got thousands of people in a room, like you need to deliver. That's not the space to be experimenting and deciding to work out who you are. Like, yeah, it supports the process, but you are there to deliver. Sometimes what I often actually suggest to speakers as well is when they're starting out to go do as many different stages as they can. And you start noticing a few things. Every audience is absolutely different, and every stage is different. And the same stage for different seating arrangement is also a different beast. And you start recognizing like the room has a breath and a life of its own, and I have to adapt to meet the shape of that room, to be able both to be myself, but also to fill that space and take it with me. As a basic intro, what I would say to people is start where you are, lean into that, and then look at what parts of you aren't being expressed. So if you're getting up there and you're never moving on stage, next time it's just a simple thing like, okay, I'm going to try some movement. But often you don't know that you're not moving because you're so stuck in the experience. So this sense of reflection, whether it's in one-to-one or having someone else reflect to you, is absolutely essential.
Yeah, it's like breaking down film, right, of your own performance. I like that's a good tip. I'm curious too about the second one, connecting with the audience. That one I find is hard for people. Just in other people I've seen speak, you can tell as an audience member in the snap of a finger. It's like this person is either connected to me or they only care about what they're saying.
Yeah.
Both are what they are. But let's just say, we do want to connect with the audience. We want to engage them in the conversation, which is really the goal, I think. What are some tips to go about doing that in an authentic way? Because you've also seen the ways where it's like, ask the audience a question. If they don't care, they're not going to answer. So how do we really authentically connect with the people who are listening to us?
I had a student that she started working with me during COVID. And then I remember after COVID, she got her first gig and she was like, Miroslav, all this stuff you've been saying, it really works. She's like, when I started asking the audience questions and connecting with them, she's like, it felt like surfing. Like I felt the emotion in response to my question move through the whole room. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like when you're connected to them, you do feel that. So I feel what's often wrong is people are again running the technique, the mechanical approach. So they're like, I don't know what the technique is. It's like ask a question and count to 3 inside your head. Now, if I did that with you while we're sitting around the coffee table, you'd be like, this guy's weird. And he's not really interested. He's just like scripted some questions he's going to ask me to pretend to be interested. Like humans are not stupid. We know that on some level. And it's very different asking a question from that place compared to asking it authentically. And when you're being present with an audience, you will sense when they're actually answering your question and when they're just entertaining it. And sometimes for me, like if I get the first response, if I ask a question, I'm just getting a bunch of blank faces. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to ask a few more questions. And if people are still sitting there like this, sometimes it's just a cultural thing or an organizational cultural thing. And I'd be like, no, guys, this is actually a question. What does this mean to you? Like, load up some answer inside of your head. When this lands, what are you experiencing? And then you'll feel that what happens is you're communicating that you care with them. For a lot of people, that's scary because there's no script there, because you're actually caring and you're actually leaning in. And one of the simple things I teach, which I'm not going to go into the full thing, but I call it the 4 levels of silence. The first 3 I teach, the 4th isn't really relevant for public speaking. Most people think of silence as just a verbal silence. It's when you stop talking. But if you stop talking and in your head you're freaking out or you're counting to 3 or 4 or 5 seconds or whatever, you're not actually being silent. You're still filling that space with data. And we're aware of that as humans. Like I can't explain to you how, but we just know it. The second silence is mental. So when you ask the question, you actually go quiet inside your head because you're waiting for a response. The audience can feel that on some level. And then the third silence is when that becomes emotional as well. So you've done the first 2 and then you're not freaking out about it. You're just there to be with and receive whatever the audience is responding. And it creates radically more connection than just throwing random questions into the room.
Yeah, that's interesting because then I would think if you know who you are, you're present with the audience, that also gives you the opportunity to kind of tweak your messaging and be responding, because that's what I was getting at with my question was, you've seen presenters who ask a question, like you said, count to a number, if that's what they're doing or not. They're just asking like a yes or no question to affirm their data or affirm their message. And it's like, don't engage me if you're just going to keep talking about what you're talking about. I sound like a narcissist when I'm saying this, but like this is what the audience is thinking, right?
Mm.
It's so pre-scripted. It's like, yep, got my yes, move on to the next point. Got my yes, move on. Oh, we'll throw in a no and then move on. Um, how do you go about making sure, and do you teach this to your students that you should manipulate your message to engage the audience further? Manipulate might be a bad word, but really make sure we are speaking to the people in the room and not to a script, as you mentioned, or an agenda or anything other than who's sitting in front of us.
Yeah, I think we continually have to be doing that. And I think this is a part of speaking that perhaps unnerves people. Like speaking on stage has a lot of similarities to speaking with people, like I said, over a coffee. And if you were going to sit with a friend over a coffee and they're in a different state or they've got things on their mind, you would respond to that. You wouldn't just speak over them. And we have to develop the capacity to do that on stage as well. But to do it on stage takes a lot more presence and a lot more self mastery as well. It's like we have to be a lot more confident about who we are to be able to meet a room of people from that place.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. I love these tips, and it's simple and practical when you break it down. Obviously, it's not easy to do. There's training and practice that's involved. What are some good ways, as you mentioned, to practice and get on other stages? What are some ways you found to kind of test your presence, get validate your message, if you will, and get out there and practice? Because it's very hard to go from not speaking or unpaid speaker to $50,000 engagements. That leap is probably not going to take place for most people. But
Mm.
where can people at least get started?
Yeah, I would just look at easy stages that are very low barrier to entry. Um, have a crack at stand up. Have a crack at like open mic kind of nights. Do some stand up poetry. You can just make up poetry on the spot. That might even be scarier. Like maybe you want
I
to
was
learn
gonna
some
say
poetry.
I was cool with everything else you said. The minute you said stand up and poetry, I'm like, no, I'm out. This is not gonna happen.
Yeah, they're scary, but also the storytelling nights, where anyone can jump up and tell a story. And usually those communities are very supportive. And if you stuff it up, it doesn't matter. Like people are just happy to support you and giving it a crack. From there, I often say there's, your low barrier to entry things like business networking nights, professional networking nights. Usually you'll have speakers at those kind of things. Some of them meet weekly, so they're continually looking for speakers. Um, if you're a professional, it's like lunchtime. Like that's all you need, lunchtime. Just call some staff members together and give them a presentation. And if there's interest, you can do something like that weekly with a group of people. I've had people start with like friends and family, which for some people can actually be scarier than presenting to a room full of strangers. But like for me, really, when people go to your high school or your primary school, usually if you've done something in your life, they'll be happy to have you back, whether it's to present to a small like group of students or to a big one. I don't know what it's like in America, but I know in Australia that's worked for quite a few people. I've suggested it to. So it's like the opportunities are there, and most importantly, it's about uh, trying numerous and different opportunities. Because
Yeah.
what you learn on like a open mic storytelling stage is going to give you a different facet and different kind of approach to speaking than what you would get if you're speaking to like a group of 15-year-olds.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's good advice too. And yes, very scary. I still stand by that. Everything else was fine. The networking, the high school, but the open mic and comedy, I'm not there yet. Maybe you'll get me there. I love that. So then the next step is obviously the paid speaking. How do you break into that world? Because I know everybody these days wants to be a paid speaker, and everyone else will just use the same example as before. Always says, "I'm going to be on Tony Robbins' stage one day." That
Mhm.
is highly unlikely. Let's just analyze the numbers. How do we take the step though, as unpaid speakers to paid speakers? What's that first little baby step?
Well, first you want to understand the industry. So there's two main ways that speakers get paid. The first one is platform speaking, or paid to speak, depending on how you refer to it. Paid to speak basically means, sorry, not paid to speak, selling from stage. So platform speaking and selling from stage are the same thing. In that model, you're typically up there speaking for free, but as the name suggests, you're selling your own product and services from stage. Um, you have variations of that. Some are like, the intense ones where it's like run to the back of the room. You also have more back end style closes where those of you interested register and I'll give you a call, or the sales team will reach out or whatever after the event. So it's a bit more soft. You're not going to burn rapport on stage. What you'd realize with that approach very quickly is you can start monetizing it from your first speaking gig. The gap from going to being paralyzed to learning to speak, like that is a massive skill set. One of the most powerful skill sets you can learn in life, because it gives you so much access to influence and leadership and moving people. Then there's a second gap where you go from recognizing, yes, I'm confident on stage, to now I have to learn to sell. There is a lot of fear that you have to meet and get through. And I've had people, like even recently, someone that came and did some work with me, and they're like, oh yeah, I get this, I can do this. Then they went and just did a close after a 2-day training they did, and it was like terrifying for them. And they mumbled their words and didn't say what they needed to say. And their peers that were also in the training with me, they were like, you just really stuffed that up. Very like seasoned, confident person, but it brings up all of our stuff. And this is for me the real value of speaking as well. We're going to meet the parts of ourselves we've been running from. But to come back to your question, the second one is being paid to speak. So it's more of the keynoting model. So you get on stage and you're paid X amount per hour. You're going to need two things if you want to go down that model. You're going to need people to trust you, or that you've built trust with. And you're going to have talks and keynotes that are positioned to solve or add value to your clients' problems. So I know niching is like always a topic for people where they're like, oh, but I don't want a niche. I mean, if you go to the market and you have someone that's got nothing on their table and it's like, what do you do? It's like, well, I'm here for everyone. It's like, you're not really offering anything to anyone. But if you can come up with specific issues that your talk or your keynote is going to speak to and give insights and breakthroughs for, that's really the direction you want to go in. And remember that the keynote is more of a teaser. It's a taster. You're going to give value, but you're not going to give your 15 years of life experience in that keynote. They're usually half an hour. So you're looking at how do I make it engaging and give value and have them longing for more inside of the time I spend with them. You really want to pack it with value. But what I often see people do is, death by PowerPoint. They'll give 200 PowerPoints in the space of half an hour. And it's like, we didn't really get anything. You're better off focusing on what's the essence that this organization or corporation needs in that time to give them the most value, but not have them be overwhelmed with what they've just received. And to really to give people the next step, if you do want to follow that model, look at people and friends you already have that are working in those environments as easy ways to open the door. It's going to be a lot quicker doing it that way than cold calling.
Yeah, super hard to get on a paid stage, just building relationships out of nothing. I've seen just from our colleagues who are speakers, other people in our network, it's very easy once you have those people who know how to get on stage or know the person running the stage. If you can connect with them and build relationships that way, I've seen people have massive success. On the flip side, I've seen people go the route of literally DMing people who manage events, and they're like, who are you? Have you ever spoken before? So yeah, those are great tips. But this is a valuable conversation. So many people want to speak. So many people should speak. I still believe in that. Whether it's just to your staff and your team, or to your partners, or it is in front of an audience if you're an expert in some area. I believe it is one of the most valuable skills of communication. And in terms of business leaders to their employees, I see people mess it up all the time. People do not want to listen to a static presentation. So Miroslav, thank you for being here and educating our audience. You've offered so graciously, you have an email, or if people email you, you have a speaker's starter pack, if you will. So tell me a little bit about what they're going to get, and we'll toss all of that in the show notes down below, wherever you're watching or listening.
Yeah, awesome. So firstly, there's a bit of a meditation that I call it a meditation, but it's really a process just to drop you into your body. So you're feeling more grounded, more confident before you get on stage. So it gets rid of a lot of the nerves. There's also, for anyone that wants to do a TEDx talk, there's the free Must Know Secrets. It's going to save you a lot of time and effort and maybe even money just going through things that I learned to get onto the TEDx stage. And finally, there's two more things, but the last one I won't even speak about. It's just a guide. The one that I find really valuable is the top 8 ways to open a stage. So a lot of the time people get on stage and they just nervously mumble for the first 30 seconds to 2 minutes, which isn't really useful because you lose the attention of your audience. So when you're first stepping on stage, that really is the moment to make that connection and go with it. And I give you 8 of the most powerful ways that I found through studying hundreds of videos. I literally spent days just going through videos and making this document. And any one of those openings, make it your own. But when you do, you'll just find it's a different level of engagement from when you step on stage.
That's awesome. I love it. Definitely take him up on that. Again, all the details are down below in the show notes, wherever you're watching or listening to get access to that stuff. I can't thank you enough for coming and being an amazing guest on this podcast. But I also love to end these episodes with a question. And that's a question from you for the audience. We believe that powerful questions get powerful answers. And in regards to this conversation, the topic we talked about today, growing your business, growing your brand through speaking, what is one question you would want the listener to walk away with and think about after listening to this episode so that they can take their speaking experience to the next level or take their brand to the next level, whatever that is? What is that powerful question that you want people to think about?
Yeah, okay. Consider where, and really I would invite you to close your eyes and take a few breaths and think about this. Consider where you would be in 5 years from now if you seriously committed yourself to speaking on stage. Consider who you would become, how your relationship to your friends and family would change, how your posture would change if you knew that you could get on stage and just be yourself and speak anytime, how you would think differently internally when you're just going about your everyday. And also, perhaps most importantly for those of us in business, is how many more people you would reach with your message, your vision, your company, the service you're offering, if that just became an extension of who you are.
That's a good question, a good series of questions to ask. I encourage you to go through that. Take a minute, digest that, let it sink in. Thank you, Miroslav, for being a phenomenal guest today.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you for having me.
And for you watching and listening, wherever you are, first of all, thank you. Definitely take him up on that offer. Again, down in the show notes below. Make sure you subscribe. We want you to keep coming back to Harmonious at lunch every single day of the week to help you build your business one little baby step at a time and get out of the box that we're in. There's so many bigger and better ideas out there, and we bring on amazing guests every single day to help you move your business forward. We'll see you on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks.